The deep hum of Olympus Base's early warning systems rattled through the control tower, a low vibration that pulsed up through Commander Daniel Wilson's boots and into his chest. He stood at the edge of the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back, staring out through the reinforced viewport at the swirling blue-green haze of the colony's atmospheric dome. Beyond it, the void of space stretched infinite and cold, dotted with the faint glint of distant stars. Routine. Predictable. Until it wasn't. A red alert flashed across the holographic display beside him, its shrill beep cutting through the hum like a knife. Wilson's gray eyes flicked to the screen as data streamed in. Hyperspace anomaly detected. Coordinates, 0.0.1. Mass unknown. Velocity, accelerating. His brow furrowed. Lieutenant Harris, report, he barked, voice steady despite the sudden tightness in his gut. Sir, sensors are picking up a massive signature exiting hyperspace. Directly above us, Harris replied from her station, her fingers flying over the console. Her voice trembled on the last word, and Wilson caught the flicker of fear in her wide eyes as she turned to meet his gaze. It's not one of ours. Before Wilson could respond, the viewport flared with blinding light. He threw up a hand, squinting as the anomaly resolved into something monstrous. A Krax warship, Dreadnought class, its jagged hull stretching kilometers across like a predator's maw poised to swallow the colony whole. Its surface gleamed crimson and black, scarred from battles fought across galaxies, and its weapons arrays glowed with the dull orange of charged plasma coils. It hung there, motionless, a shadow eclipsing the stars. Shields up, Wilson roared, slamming a fist onto the comm panel. All stations brace for. The words died in his throat as the base's shield grid flickered to life outside the dome. Pale blue energy shimmering for a heartbeat, then collapsed. A cascade of sparks erupted from the console nearest Harris, and she yelped, jerking back as the holographic display dissolved into static. Shields are down, sir, she shouted, her voice cracking. They've jammed the generators. Wilson's stomach dropped. He'd seen combat, decades of it, but nothing like this. The Krax didn't negotiate, they eradicated. And now they were here, their shadow darkening the colony's artificial sky. He forced his breathing to steady, years of command hardening his resolve, and turned to the viewport just as the dreadnought's ventral bays split open. A deafening klaxon blared through the tower, its wail echoing down into the sprawling civilian sectors below. Red emergency lights pulsed along the walls, casting long shadows as the control room crew scrambled to their posts. Beyond the dome, streaks of fire plummeted from the warship. Drop pods, dozens of them, slicing through the atmosphere like flaming talons. They struck the dome with concussive force, each impact reverberating through the tower's frame. Cracks spiderwebbed across the transparent alloy, and Wilson's heart sank as the first pod punched through, its hull glowing molten from re-entry. Evacuation protocol now, he ordered, spinning toward the comm officer. Get the civilians to the bunkers. The officer nodded, hands shaking as he relayed the command. Wilson switched his own comm to the colony-wide channel, his voice cutting through the rising panic. This is Commander Wilson. All personnel, proceed to designated evacuation points immediately. This is not a drill. But even as he spoke, he knew it was too late. Through the viewport, he saw the streets below erupt into chaos. Civilians poured from their homes. Scientists in lab coats, workers in jumpsuits, families clutching children, racing toward the reinforced shelters scattered across Olympus Base. A mother stumbled, her toddler screaming in her arms, as a pod crashed down a block away, its impact hurling debris into the air. The dome's breaches widened, oxygen hissing out into the vacuum, and Wilson clenched his fists until his knuckles whitened. Another pod smashed through, closer this time, its landing shaking the tower. The comm crackled with static, then filled with frantic voices, security teams shouting about breaches, engineers reporting failing systems. Wilson's gaze snapped back to the dreadnought, its silhouette now framed by the fiery trails of more pods. How had they missed this? The Krax had slipped past every deep space sensor, every patrol. And now Olympus Base, humanity's farthest outpost, was defenseless. He turned to Harris, whose face was pale, her hands frozen over her dead console. Lieutenant, get to the secondary command post. We need to. A low, guttural rumble interrupted him, emanating from the comm system. It wasn't static. It was a voice, alien, guttural, and cold. Wilson's blood ran cold as every screen in the room flickered, then stabilized on a single image, a scarred, crimson-armored face, its reptilian eyes glowing with menace. The cracks were here, and they weren't just attacking, they were announcing their dominion. The control tower shuddered as another crack's drop pod tore through the dome, its impact sending a plume of shattered alloy and glass spiraling into the air. Commander Wilson braced himself against the comm panel, the floor tilting beneath him as the structure groaned. Through the cracked viewport, he saw the pod's hatch erupt open, disgorging a dozen warriors clad in crimson battle armor. Each stood 3 meters tall, their figures shrouded in a faint shimmer, personal shield generators, glinting like heat haze. Their weapons, massive plasma rifles, hummed with lethal intent as they advanced into the civilian sector below. Security teams, engage! Wilson snapped into the comm, his voice barely audible over the klaxons and the rising screams filtering through the channel. He switched to the tactical display, or what was left of it. Half the screens were dark, fried by the crack's jamming signal, but a few still flickered with grainy feeds from the base's perimeter. He watched as Olympus Base's security forces, clad in lightweight exosuits, poured out of the armory bunkers, their pulse rifles barking blue streaks of energy at the invaders. The cracks didn't even flinch. A warrior in the lead raised a clawed hand, and the air rippled as a shield absorbed the incoming fire. The energy bolts dissipated harmlessly, leaving only faint scorch marks on the crimson armor. Then the cracks returned fire. A single plasma volley lit up the feed, a searing orange lance that cut through the security line like a scythe. Bodies vaporized mid-step, exosuits melting into slag, and the survivors scattered, their shouts of defiance turning to cries of terror. Wilson's jaw tightened. Their weapons, state-of-the-art by Earth standards, were useless against Crack's shield tech. "Fall back," he ordered, slamming the comm again. "Regroup at the inner perimeter. Protect the civilians." But the channel was a mess of static and overlapping pleas. "They're everywhere. Shields won't hold. We're losing the east quadrant." He spun to the viewport, helpless as more pods rained down, each one a hammer blow to the colony's fragile defenses. The dome was a lattice of fractures now, leaking atmosphere in thin, silvery streams, and the streets below were a battlefield. Crack's warriors marched through the chaos, their heavy boots cracking the pavement, herding civilians like cattle toward the central plaza. A young officer stumbled into the control room, his uniform torn, blood streaking his face. "Sir, they've breached the armory," he gasped, clutching his side. "They're cutting through everything, doors, walls, people. We can't stop them." Wilson's mind raced. Olympus Base wasn't built for this. It was a research outpost, a symbol of humanity's reach, not a fortress. The cracks had exploited that weakness with surgical precision, bypassing the outer defenses and striking at the heart. He grabbed the officer's shoulder, steadying him. "Get to the bunkers. Tell the teams to stand down. Surrender if they have to. We can't lose more lives." The officer's eyes widened. "Surrender, sir? But they'll slaughter us all if we don't," Wilson cut in, his voice low and bitter. "Go." The officer nodded shakily and staggered out, leaving Wilson alone with the dying hum of the tower's systems. He turned back to the viewport, watching as the cracks dragged civilians from their hiding spots, scientists, engineers, children, their faces pale with shock and despair. Resistance had crumbled in minutes. Then the comm crackled again, that guttural rumble filling the air. Every functioning screen in the control room, every terminal across Olympus Base and beyond, lit up with the same image. A Crack's commander, his scarred face dominating the feed. Vorthak, Wilson realized with a chill. He'd seen the intel reports, the grainy holos of this warlord who'd raised colonies from the Orion Arm to the Perseus Fringe. His reptilian eyes glowed amber, slits narrowing as he surveyed his unseen audience. Jagged scars criss-crossed his snout, and a crest of serrated bone jutted from his skull, framing his crimson helm. "People of Earth," Vorthak rasped, his voice a deep growl that vibrated through the tower's walls. The translation software kicked in, overlaying his words with a cold, mechanical tone. "Your outpost is mine. Your weapons are dust. Your shields are broken. I am Vorthak, blade of the Crack's dominion, and I offer you this mercy. Submit and live as our thralls. Resist and be erased." The broadcast cut to footage of the plaza below, where Crack's warriors stood over kneeling civilians, their plasma rifles leveled at trembling heads. A child sobbed, clinging to her father, and Wilson's hands curled into fists, nails digging into his palms. Vorthak's face returned, his lipless maw twisting into what might have been a sneer. Your leaders will answer me. Your worlds will hear me. This is the fate of defiance. The screens went black, but the echo of his words lingered, heavy as the smoke rising from the ruined streets. Wilson staggered back, his breath ragged, and glanced at Harris's empty station. She'd made it out, he hoped, but the rest of the control crew were gone, fled, or dead. He switched the comm to a secure Earth frequency, praying it would punch through the crack's interference. This is Olympus Base Command. We're overrun. Crack's forces have taken the colony. Request immediate assistance. Any fleet within range. Static answered him. He tried again, voice hoarse. Earth, do you copy? We need. A shadow loomed outside the viewport, and Wilson froze. A Crack's warrior stood on the tower's exterior platform, its crimson armor glinting in the emergency lights. It raised a clawed fist, and the reinforced glass shattered inward, a gust of escaping air tugging at Wilson's uniform. He drew his sidearm, a pitiful gesture, and fired. The pulse round sparked against the warrior's shield, doing nothing. The Crack stepped inside, its bulk filling the doorway, and Wilson backed against the console, his heart pounding. The warrior didn't fire. Instead, it pointed a claw at him, then at the floor, an order to kneel. Wilson's mind screamed to fight, to die standing, but the image of those civilians flashed before him. Slowly, deliberately, he dropped the pistol and sank to one knee, his head bowed. The Cracks grunted, a sound like grinding stone, and turned away, leaving him alive, for now. The War Council chamber on Earth buzzed with a tension thicker than the reinforced steel walls that encased it. Buried deep beneath New Geneva's towering skyline, the room was a fortress of its own. Hushed voices, flickering holoscreens, and the faint hum of emergency generators powering the planet's last line of strategic defense. Counselor Elena Marquez paced before the central table, her sharp features illuminated by the blue glow of a galactic map. The map pulsed red over Olympus Base's coordinates, a wound in humanity's fragile frontier. Around her, admirals and generals sat in rigid silence, their uniforms crisp but their faces etched with exhaustion. Confirmation just came through, Marquez said, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. She tapped the table, and a grainy audio feed crackled to life. Wilson's broken transmission. We're overrun. Crack's forces have taken the colony. Request immediate assistance. The static swallowed his words, and Marquez killed the playback with a flick of her wrist. That was 10 minutes ago. Since then, nothing. The Cracks have jammed every channel out of the sector. Admiral Chun leaned forward, his silver hair catching the light. Olympus Bases was our farthest outpost. 200 civilians, a full security detachment, and the best shielding tech we had. If they fell that fast, we're looking at a dreadnought-class assault. Maybe worse. His dark eyes flicked to the map, where the red dot pulsed like a heartbeat. We've got no fleets close enough to respond in time. Then we're blind and deaf out there, General Roth growled, slamming a fist on the table. The Cracks could be staging for a push on the inner colonies. We need intel, now, or we're next. Marquez stopped pacing, her gaze settling on a junior aide who'd slipped into the room, clutching a data pad. The young man's face was pale, sweat beading on his brow despite the chamber's chill. Speak, she ordered. Ma'am, he stammered. We've got a ping from the Phantom. Major Angel Mason. She's inbound from a recon mission near Olympus Base. She's close, maybe an hour out. Her stealth ship's still off their scanners, far as we know. A ripple of relief passed through the room, though Marquez's expression remained stone. Ghost, she murmured, the nickname carrying a weight of unspoken hope. Patch her through. If anyone can get eyes on this, it's her. Far beyond Earth's atmosphere, in the cold silence of space, the Phantom glided like a specter through the void. Its sleek, matte black hull drank in the starlight, rendering it invisible to all but the most advanced sensors. Inside the cockpit, Major Angel Ghost, Mason sat hunched over the controls, her gloved hands steady on the yoke. Her dark hair was pulled tight into a bun, strands escaping to frame a face hardened by years of war. Her eyes, augmented, faintly glowing with neural implants, tracked the streams of data flowing across the HUD. The Phantom's cockpit was a cocoon of muted lights and soft beeps, a stark contrast to the chaos she knew awaited her. Echo, her neural-linked AI, hummed in her mind, its voice a calm, synthetic whisper. Incoming transmission, Priority Alpha. Earth War Council. Play it, Ghost said, her voice low-clipped. She adjusted her posture, the servos in her battle suit whirring faintly as she straightened. The HUD flickered, and Marquez's face appeared, her stern features pixelated by the distance. Major Mason, this is Counselor Marquez. Olympus Base has fallen to a Crax assault, Dreadnought-class warship, full invasion force. We've lost contact. You're the closest asset we have. We need you to assess the situation and report back. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Understood. Ghost's jaw tightened. She'd been running dark on a recon op near the sector's edge, tracking pirate lanes, not expecting a war. Understood, she replied, her tone flat but her mind already racing. ETA to Olympus Base, 52 minutes. I'll get you your intel. The feed cut out and Echo chimed in, adjusting course. Cloaking systems at full capacity. Recommend prepping for hostile environment. Already on it, Ghost muttered. She tapped a sequence into the console, and the Phantom's sensors flared to life, painting a distant silhouette on the screen. The Crax dreadnought, a jagged blight against the stars, orbiting the wreckage of Olympus Base. Her augmented eyes narrowed, processing the data faster than any human could, pod trajectories, energy signatures, patrol patterns forming in her mind like a battlefield map. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was personal. Olympus Base had been her staging ground years ago, back when she was still flesh and bone, before the surgeries turned her into something more. Now it was a slaughterhouse, and she was the only one close enough to do anything about it. Echo, she said, voice steady despite the fire in her chest. Run diagnostics on the suit. We're going in.